everyone. Well, this is an update on the patching. Now, I had put a first coat, sprayed it over with primer. I don't think the patching cracked. As you can see, or I think you could see. I can't really see into my camcorder to see what you're seeing. It cracked a bit. I don't think it's the patching that cracked. I just think that the paint, when it was put on top of the patching cracked. So I think it's just the paint. I don't really know what to do about that. I figured it didn't really go on as neatly as I was only going to do it over the patches, and I decided, oh hell, I'll just sand the whole hood and redo the hood. And then my mom said, well, if you're going to be redoing that, why not do the back part that you made a mistake on? You can see she has plans for me. And redo that at the same time. So I'm like, okay. Now I think what I'm just going to do, I'm going to do the trunk, because that's really the worst part. The other part doesn't look quite that great, but it's not quite as bad. The problem what I'm running into is that it's getting hot. I mean, it's only spring, but it's getting hot, and frankly, I just don't know. There just comes a point when the weather's just too hot to work on the car. That's actually what I ran into a problem last year when I was painting the car, is that at the very end, I had to kind of rush because it just kept getting hotter and hotter, and I wanted to get her done before I couldn't, I could just no longer work on her. And I'm not even sure that isn't one of the reasons why the clear coat was such a disaster. Though, as I said, clear coat from a spray can, it's just very hard to work with that stuff. I don't know how good of a job you can do with it. I mean, I could have probably done a little better, but anyway. So, yeah. So, anyway, I'm gonna sand and prime this area. One thing I'm a little worried too is that I don't know. I'll have to see, I had the advantage before that her paint was peeling when I was painting her before. I'll have to see how well I can scrape off this clear coat. They claim you don't have to scrape it down to the metal with that, but I do at least probably have to get it off, to get the clear coat at least off to do, to paint her, so it, it won't chip later. But, anyway, so that's the, hello everyone. Well, okay, so as you can see, I've primed her. Now, we had an interesting story. I got ready to prime her. I did the back too. I was getting ready to prime her, and I was looking for my newspaper. We had set aside some newspaper because, of course, when you're painting, you're going to be, when you're painting, you're going to be, you're going to need to protect your surfaces. So I went to look for my newspaper, and my mom went, oh no, because my mom had suddenly, recently cleaned, and she threw out all the newspaper, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to use now? I can't do it. Well, we have this big roll of brown paper. It actually is meant for being painter's paper, but we use it for covering our boxes when we have a package to send, and if it's got writing all over it, So I use that, and at first I thought it was going to be really inconvenient. Actually, I have the roll over here, and as you can see, it's a big roll, and I was thinking, oh God, this is going to be really a pain, having to unroll it and cut it and all that. But actually, it wound up being very nice. It might be a little more of an expensive way to do things rather than, using flyers that you get in the mailbox anyway. But but it wound up being very nice because I could just kind of roll it over her and tape it up very quickly. Whereas, when you're doing little flyers, that can take a lot more tape and a lot more, it takes a lot more time to do it. So that was the first problem. And then the second thing happened is that I got down to like a half can of primer, and I was spraying her. And what happened is that when the can, they changed the tops, I think, recently. And it made it easier spraying, but when the can got half full, it only worked if I held it upside down. Now, do you know how hard it is to spray a flat surface when you have to hold the can upside down? It's just very difficult. The trunk wasn't really the area. I know I had some striping. That always seemed to happen. It's kind of pretty hard to kind of, particularly when the car's kind of curved, it's just kind of hard to have one line meet the other. And I had only bought, my original plan was just to do the patches, and so I only bought one can of primer. And then suddenly the project got a little bigger when my mom said, well, why don't you do the back of the trunk and that. So here I was, I had only one can, and I was just trying to get the first coat of primer. So I kind of did it messy, I know I missed, it's not neatly done. But then I got to the front, and I got half of the hood done, and suddenly it seemed to be running out, and yet the can was only half full. And so I turned it up by accident. I discovered it works as long as you hold it upside down. So here I am trying to do this, and it was very difficult. So the hood didn't wind up turning out, was even worse. But at least I got one coat. On. I'll have to go and buy some more, but I'll do a neater, fortunately I'll be doing a neater, thing. So anyway, but at least I got a relatively protective coat on her.